Alright, this is CIS 146, section 50 for the 2015 spring semester. What you're looking at is the sample Excel test for the unit on Excel. I wanted to go through and create a video and to walk through the sample test to give you an idea of what the what your test next Monday night on March the 2nd would look like. So what I've done is I've downloaded the sample test from Blackboard, and it can be found on the left side of the screen on the left hand menu under sample exams, and you just click on the sample test for Excel, and you're going to download a spreadsheet as a PDF file. It's 2 pages. First page looks like this. Second page looks like this. The second page gives you directions on how to calculate the formula for each cell, or at least it tells you what it's looking for. So what I'm going to do is I've put together a spreadsheet. There is no spreadsheet to download, so you'll have to build it yourself, and it's really simple. All you're going to do is add these data labels over here to the left, total, average, largest, smallest. Then you're going to add the employees' names, like so. And really the only information that you're given that you won't calculate is the hours the employees work and the rate of pay. Alright, so we got to calculate everything else. So we're going to start by looking at, let's go back and look at page 1. This is what your finished product should look like. You should have all of these values calculated, and these values calculated. Then when we're done, we're going to create a pie chart. Alright, so let's get started. I'm going to go back to page 2, and the first thing I want to do is calculate the information for the employees. If you read the cells above, you'll see that all of this information is based on the information below. And you can see that the spreadsheet, the only given values are the hours that the employee worked, their rate of pay, and then the FICA tax percentage up here. Alright, so first thing we're going to look at is it says these cells should compute the gross pay for each employee by multiplying the hours and the rate of each employee. Well, I know what the hours are, and I know what the rate is, so I can calculate the gross. So I'm going to flip over to my spreadsheet, and in these columns here I'm going to calculate the gross pay. I'm looking in the gross column. Alright, so to calculate that, it said multiply the hours times the rate, and I can easily do that by entering an equal sign, which is how I tell Excel I'm going to input a formula or a function. Click the first cell that I want in my formula. The asterisk sign is, or the asterisk is the multiplication operator in Excel, and then click my second cell. And you can see my formula, it says C10 times I10. So what I'm telling Excel to do is multiply the value that's in C10, which is 40. You can see column C, row 10, and multiply it times the value in column I, row 10, which is 5. So I've got my formula input. I hit enter, and I get my gross pay for George, which is $200. Alright, now I also want to calculate the gross pay for these employees. Well, I don't want to have to type that formula every time. So in situations when you're going to use the same formula or similar formula, in this case we can do it here. We can just click and drag, and that'll copy the formula down, and you can see that George's gross pay was calculated by C10 times I10. Sam is C11 times I11, which is right. That's cell C11. That's cell I11. So these are easily calculated when you just drag. It'll just copy the formula down. Alright, so I've got gross pay. Alright, so I'm going to flip back over to my instructions. I'm going to take a look at the next group of cells to the right of the hours worked, and we're going to see what I need to calculate. Let's take a look. It says these cells should compute the net pay for each employee by subtracting the taxes from the gross pay. Okay, well I know what the gross pay is because I just calculated it. But do I know what the taxes are? No, I don't. This is the net pay. So I don't know what all my taxes are because I wasn't given that information, and I haven't calculated it to this point, so that must mean that I still have to calculate it. Alright, so move to the next cell. Taxes. You see up here, taxes is the row or the column that I'm in. These cells should compute the taxes for each employee by adding the federal, state, and FICA taxes for each employee. Okay, well, I don't have a value for the federal, state, or FICA taxes. Alright, so that means that I'm still, needing to, calculate some more information. So let's take a look at the federal column. See, federal, I'm up here, and I'm calculating it for the employees at the bottom. It says to calculate the federal, these cells should compute the federal taxes for each employee by multiplying the gross pay times 20% for each employee. Well, I can do that because I know the gross pay, and they want me to multiply it by 20%. So that should be pretty easy. So I flip back over to my spreadsheet. I found the column for federal taxes, and I'm going to start with George again. And I'm going to use a formula to calculate, so I input my equal sign. I'm going to multiply gross pay times 20%. Now in this case, I'm going to use it in decimal form. So 20% would be 0.20. Hit enter. Alright, that's $40. Same thing applies. I need to calculate the federal taxes for Sam, Sue, Beth, Amos, and Jeff. So I can click and drag this formula as well. Alright, and I've got my federal taxes for everyone. Okay, next step, we want to calculate the state taxes. State taxes, based on our instructions, says these cells should compute the state taxes for each employee by multiplying the gross pay times 4% for each employee. Okay, well, this is similar to what we just did for federal. Not exactly the same, but it's similar. So I'm going to input an equal sign to tell Excel I want to use a formula, and I'm going to multiply gross pay, which is $200 for George, times 4%. Now in this case, a decimal form of 4% is 0.04. Hit enter. That's $8. Alright, I want to apply that formula to all my cells below, and I get estate taxes for all the employees. Alright, so we're moving right along, no problems. Next, I need to calculate the FICA. These cells should compute the FICA taxes for each employee by multiplying the gross pay times 7.65% for each employee. Alright, we see the value up here, so since it's already input in our spreadsheet, we're going to use that value, 7.65%. Alright, and you can see it in my spreadsheet. I have it up here. So we're going to equal gross pay times 7.65%. And it's $15.30. So based on what we've done to this point, you would think that we could just click and drag this formula or double click our autofill handle and get that same answer or the same FICA taxes for the other employees. So I'm going to double click and see what happens. Get the black cross, there it is. The formula didn't work. The reason why, to determine how a formula doesn't work, the best thing to do is just click at the cell and look at what you asked Excel to do. So in this case, to determine the FICA score or the FICA taxes for Sam, I multiplied B11, which is his gross pay, times H5. Well, what's in H5? Nothing. And the reason why this formula didn't work is because as I copy the formula down and as I arrow down, you can see each cell changed as I drug it down. Well, I wanted to multiply all the values by 7.65%. But when I use autofill to fill in my formula, it's going to automatically change those cell references based on the row or column that they're being drug across or down to. So in this case, what I have to use is an absolute cell reference. Alright, so there's two ways to do that. One is I can just go back to the formula that worked that I want to use, and I can add dollar signs before the column reference, which is a letter, and before the row reference, which is the number, H4. Alright, so that tells Excel that I don't want you to change this cell reference when I drag when I use autofill. So we'll try again. Click and drag, and it worked. Alright, so now I know how to use an absolute cell reference. But there's one more way to do it. It's also taught in the book, and I'll demonstrate it here. I want to multiply my gross pay times 7.65%. And when I click on the cell before I hit enter, if I mash the key F4, which in this case my computer's got a funny keyboard, it should allow you, and I'll try one more time, cancel. It'll allow you to add those dollar signs, or it should. In my case, my computer won't let me because I have a keyboard that has different functions programmed to those function buttons. So, but that's how you. That's another way of doing it. You would just hit F4. It would add the dollar signs to H4, and you can then copy your formula down. Okay, so now that we have all the taxes, we can go back and let's get our total taxes. So in the total taxes column, it says these cells should compute the taxes for each employee by adding the federal, state, and FICA taxes for one employee. Okay, so basically it says we want to add these taxes up for each employee to get our total taxes. So that's pretty easy. There's two ways I can do this. I can hit equal, and then I can add each cell together, which every time I click on a cell, I just hit a plus sign, click on the next cell, plus sign, click on the last cell, enter, and I get 6330, which is going to be my total taxes. I can do it that way, or I can use a function, which for those of you that attended class will know that a function is a predefined formula, and I can type it in like so. I want to use the sum function in this case, or I can use the auto sum button on the ribbon. Hit the down arrow, hit sum, then it's going to ask me which cells I want to add together. And in this case, my formula is in the way. So let's do this. Let's type it in. Sum, open parentheses, click and drag, close parentheses, and then there's my formula. And there's my total taxes for George. Now one way, some of you may or may not know, a little trick about Excel is if I highlight these values, alright, those are the cells that I just added together. Well, Excel's got a feature built in down here at the bottom where it gives you some commonly used information, like the average, the count, or the number of cells in that range, or the sum. So I can check myself to make sure that my sum function worked out like it was supposed to. Alright, so now that I know that I've got my math correct, I can double click, and autofill will fill in the rest of the range. Alright, so now I got my total taxes, which is what I needed, along with my gross to calculate my net pay. So these, the directions in the cell for net pay says these cells should compute net pay for each employee by subtracting the taxes from the gross pay for each employee. Alright, so now I know equal. I will subtract the total taxes from my gross pay to get my net pay. This is your take-home pay. Alright, so now I've got all of my information filled out for my employees at the bottom. Alright, so I'm halfway there. Now, the next step is inputting this information up top. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to total the gross. So the gross should total all of the gross pay for all the employees. We want to use a function to do that. And everything on this row, hours, we want the total hours, we want the total net, we want the total taxes, we want the total federal, we want the total state, and then we want the total FICA. So it sounds similar to me. So to calculate the total gross, I'm going to hit sum, or type in sum, open parentheses. I want the sum of all of the gross pay. So I get that information in, and you can hit enter. Well, now I also want the total hours total net pay, total taxes, total federal, state, and FICA, like my directions said. So in this case, I need a formula that does the same thing that the formula in B5 does for total gross pay. So can I drag this formula from column B all the way across these columns? Absolutely. So now, well, let's see. Let's back up. Try that again. Click and drag all the way over to FICA. So now, again, I've drug my formula from left to right to fill in the range. And another thing, if I want to spot check my math, my formula, well, this is the total net pay. If I want to know what the total net pay is, if I add it up, I can highlight all those cells. You can see down here at the bottom, it's the same number. Just an easy way to check yourself. All right, next row is averages. So if I start typing in average, I'm going to get some options. When I see average highlighted, I can hit tab, and it'll ask for my arguments, which are the range of cells. So the average gross pay of this range, click and drag, and once you click and drag, hit a close parentheses, and it'll give you your average. Same rule applies. I can drag it across. Autofill is the power of Excel. A lot of the formulas and features like so allow. My email password keeps popping up. Same thing for gross. We want the largest number in the gross. All right, so basically that's what you're looking for is in this range below. We're looking for the largest number in that range. Bear with me one second. I'm going to close my email so it'll stop popping up. Well, how would you do that? In this instance, Excel is giving us a function called the maximum or the max function. So if I want to know the largest value, I click in the cell where I want to input that value, and I go to AutoSum and I hit max. Alright, so Excel automatically assumes that I want to know the max value for the cells above or the range above. That's not what I want. I want these down here. So all you have to do is click the cell in the beginning of your range and drag. Hit enter. Alright, so Excel is telling me that $440 is the largest value in this range, and just looking through this range, I can see that $440 is the largest value. So the same rule applies. I can click and drag. Autofill. And if I spot check each range, I can see 50 is the largest. This one, $300.74 is the largest. Over here, $88 is the largest. So my formulas are working. All right. Same thing for the smallest. There's a predefined formula called a function named minimum that I can use here. Same thing. Click and drag. I want to know the minimum in that in the gross pay. Let's try that again. That keeps, there we go. Enter. $180. Is that the lowest number in this range? Yep, there's nothing less than 180 in that list. So, click and drag. Alright, now we've got our, I left the column off. Well, actually, no, I didn't. Rate, I believe, was left blank on our sample test. Yeah, see, the rate column is blank, so we don't need to populate anything there. Alright, so I've got all my data now that I need to make my chart. So, let's go and look at our instructions for our chart, which says all numbers in tables should be formatted as shown on results sheet 10. Well, before we get to our chart, let's go back and make sure that we've got our numbers formatted. Alright, these look like 2 decimal places. I don't see any dollar signs. Sometimes you might be asked to format these numbers as currency. If you are, you can hit the $sign button and it'll change it to currency. In this case, we're not, so everything's got 2 decimal places, so we're good. Alright, scroll back down to the directions. Highlight the area in the box and apply auto format. 6 points. Let's see, what is that referring to? I think it's referring to the title up here, which I've already got. In mine, I've got it red, so we're good. Let's get down to the chart, though. Let's see. Graph the names of employees and their gross pay as shown on the results in sheet 10. Alright, so we're talking about a pie chart. So if we look at our pie chart on page 1, we got a title of gross pay. We've got a 3D pie chart that's got the names of the employees and the percentage that their gross pay makes up. Alright, so to do that, I need to know the employee's name and their gross pay. So that's the data that I'm concerned with. I want the employee name and the gross pay. I've got that data highlighted. I'm going to insert a pie chart, a 3D pie chart, like so. And I want to click and drag it just below my data. Alright, I'm going to scroll down. And it's not quite formatted the way I need it to be. So I need the names and I need the percentages. And I also need a chart title. Well, there's a couple ways we can do that. We can click on our chart. Let's see. We've got some options up here: design, layout, format. Got some different options. Alright, so anytime I've got the chart highlighted, I get this contextual menu up here called Chart Tools that gives us options. So let's go back to the layout. I said I needed a chart title. So let's see, centered overlay title, chart title. Alright, that looks kind of sort of what I like. It's what I need, but it's not exactly where I want it. Let's look again. Above chart. There we go. That's what we're looking for. And the name of our chart was gross pay. Alright, so I got that item out of the way. Let's see. Now, I want to change up my chart where I can see the names of the employees out around the edge and the percentage. So let's take a look. I don't really see anything on the design tab. Format section, maybe. Let's see what options we get. Fill, border style, shadow, 3D format. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Let's see, data labels, maybe. Outside in, display data labels and position outside the end of data points. That sounds something like what I want. Okay, so I'm getting closer. Not exactly the percentages, but it gives me the data value. Alright, so let's take a look. Data labels. Add more data label options. Alright, yeah, now we're cooking. Alright, in this case, I want the category name, which gives me the employee, but I don't want the value, I want the percentage. So now I've got the percentage and the employee's name. And it looks pretty close to what we've got. Now I'm not so much worried about the colors as long as it's a 3D pie chart with names and percentages. So our chart is pretty much done. Let's see a few other things that I might be asked to do on the exam. And it could be something similar, and I'll wait for Excel to catch up with me. Okay. If we want to make this look really nice, we could put a header and a footer. In this case, we're going to put a footer. Alright. Sometimes you'll be asked to add the file name. You click the file name, and if you missed it, I got to this point by clicking the page layout button in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Okay, so click that button. I get this view that I'm looking at, the page layout view. I scroll to the bottom and I click the center section of the footer. If I want to put my file name, I can put my file name. If I want to put the current date, I can click the current date on my header and footer design ribbon, and that will give me that data. So you can see Excel sample test 2 is my file name, same as the one up here, and below I got the date. If I wanted to put something in the header, I could put something in the header. In this case, I'm not going to. I'm going to go back to the bottom of my screen, and I'm going to click the normal button to go back to normal, and that's pretty much it. You should be able to do this stuff based on or perform these task based on the tutorial that you completed. There's one other thing I might say you might want to know how to do. That would be center and merge. Notice the icon. I don't think Excel 2013 has the same icon. But if I want to center and merge this information, I would highlight the cells that I want to include in my center and merge. In this case, I want to include all of them over the work that I've got here. And I hit center and merge. And once you do that, it turns all those cells into one cell, and then you can format them just like any other cell. I want to put the date. Same thing. Let's make the date a little bit bigger, but not as big as my name. Okay. Pretty simple. You go through your tutorials, and then you perform these exercises in this practice test. You should fare pretty well on the exam. Good luck.